It's 10 o'clock. This is Sky News at 10, our top story. The porn star Stormy Daniels attends court for the first time in Donald Trump's hush money trial and describes her sexual encounter with the former president. Also tonight, a nationwide border issue causes long queues at UK airports as the e-gate system fails. The Israeli government tells Sky News Hamas acted in bad faith over the terms of the ceasefire deal as Israel captures the Rafah crossing in Gaza. The company at the centre of the Ministry of Defence hack, which Sky News understands was carried out by the Chinese state, is named in Parliament. Vladimir Putin is inaugurated for a fifth term in a lavish ceremony in Moscow as supporters deny that Russia is a dictatorship.
It's not the case, absolutely. Absolutely, it's just propaganda. It's a rough propaganda, nothing else.
Prince Harry visits the UK, but the King says he has no time to see him due to a full programme. Plus, having a whale of a time, scientists discover the phonetic alphabet of sperm whales, which could help us understand how they communicate. And we'll take a first look at tomorrow's front pages. That's in our press preview from... Hello there, good evening. The woman at the centre of Donald Trump's hush money trial has taken the stand in court today. Porn star Stormy Daniels' salacious details of her sexual encounter with the former president and this year's presidential candidate prompted Trump's legal team to call for a mistrial. Mr. Trump has pleaded not guilty to 34 counts of falsifying business records to conceal the payment. Sky's US correspondent James Matthews reports now from New York.
He knew this day was coming, a reunion most reductive between the former president and the porn star.
I am Stormy Daniels, adult film star, mom, idiot who can't keep her mouth shut.
Stormy Daniels had told her story before, in books and on film. This was the live event, long awaited.
When I met Trump, he had told me he never wanted to be president, but then Trump got the Republican nomination, and that's when got real. All I had to do was sign this piece of paper to keep it quiet.
Donald Trump sat as the accused, face to face with the star witness who laid bare details of an encounter she says they had in 2006. This was the picture shown in court of when they met at a golf tournament in Lake Tahoe, Nevada, and she told of how he invited her to dinner. Stormy Daniels testified that she walked into Trump's hotel room to find him dressed in satin pajamas before she asked him to change into a shirt and trousers. She said he floated the idea that she appear on his TV show, The Apprentice, and asked her about the adult film industry. He interrupted her when she spoke and at one stage pulled out a magazine. Stormy Daniels said she told him, "Someone should spank you with that," and Trump rolled up the magazine and gave me a look. She testified, "So I took it from him and I said, 'Turn around,' and I swatted him right on the butt." She said that Trump told her, "You remind me of my daughter. She's smart and beautiful, and people underestimate her as well." At one point, Stormy Daniels used the bathroom and came out to find Donald Trump sitting on the bed. He was wearing a T-shirt and boxer shorts, posing, she said. He stood up and was bigger and blocking the way, but she said she didn't feel threatened. Then they had sex. Afterwards, when they parted, he said to her, "Let's get together again, honey bunch." Stormy Daniels said she was shaking and felt bewildered. Donald Trump denies the affair with Stormy Daniels. The case against him here is that she was paid $130,000 to stay quiet before the 2016 election and that the payment was falsely accounted for. A day of excruciating testimony was most uncomfortable for Trump. He looked upset, appeared to utter an expletive at the story of being spanked with a magazine, and was seen to shake his head at a claim that he told Stormy Daniels he and his wife didn't sleep in the same bed. During the lunch break, he posted on his social media platform, "The prosecution, which has no case, has gone too far. Mistrial."
Mr. President, do you plan on testifying?
It was a point argued by his lawyers but rejected by the judge. not what the former president wanted to hear, in keeping with everything else, and what for him was a most difficult day in court.
Well, James joins us now live from New York. And Mr. Trump, James, emerging from court in the last 20 minutes or so after, as you named it, a difficult day for him. What did he have to say?
Well, he said the day went well, essentially, as he always does. And I said that this had nothing to do with the case at hand, and that the case of the district attorney, the prosecution, was falling apart. I have to say there are those who would beg to differ. The thing to bear in mind with Stormy Daniels, Anna, is that she's a bit part player. Yes, she plays a very big part because clearly she was the porn star at the centre of the whole thing, but it's about money. It's about money she was paid, and the accountancy trail, the hard trail that leads to that being falsified in the books of the Trump organization. The prosecution have made an effective job of pinning that down with the 12 witnesses they have produced before Stormy Daniels. So that's the key point in terms of the case in court. The case outside of court, of course, is political, and one wonders how this plays with the public. Images of Donald Trump, the man who would be president, in satin pajamas, in T-shirt and boxer shorts, posing with one leg raised on a bed as this porn actress comes out of the bathroom. One wonders, certainly amongst key demographics, suburban women, evangelicals who were key to the Trump vote in 2016, one wonders what image they take away from court and the image that they will take to the polls come the November election.
James, live for us there in New York. Thank you. Huge queues are building up at UK airports because of a nationwide problem with the e-gates at airports. It's leaving some passengers complaining of waiting without access to toilets or water. Well, Sajid Chowdhury is at Heathrow for us. Any sense of the scale of this, Sajid, or indeed the cause?
Well, we don't know the cause because we know very little about what's caused this issue or indeed how long it will last, but we have seen the impact on it. And at least one airport has made reference to the fact that the problem is with the e-gates. Those are the automated gates at passport control when you're entering the country. Many of us will be familiar with these e-gates. And you can see now from the footage that we're showing you just the scale of this issue. We've had video coming in from Stansted, from Manchester, Heathrow and Gatwick, all showing very lengthy queues, and one passenger telling us that she'd been there for about 3 hours now already waiting to have this issue resolved. And we have heard from the Home Office, who have confirmed that there is an issue with the e-gates at the border force, and says that it is trying to resolve the issue as soon as possible, and the Home Office has apologised to all passengers for the inconvenience caused. And of course this comes just 2 weeks after border force workers held a strike, a 4-day strike here at Heathrow Airport. That also caused disruption. And some people may remember last year, at the end of May last year, when there were similar problems with e-gates here at this airport and across the nation. And at that time, passports had to be checked by hand, by human officers rather than the automated machines. And it took about a day to be resolved. At the time, the Home Office said that it had put in robust plans to deal with this issue, but this is now twice in under a year. And so it'll need to do more than just talk about robust plans.
Sajid, updating us there. Thank you. The Israeli military has taken complete control of the Gaza side of the Rafah border today. A source in the Israeli government told Sky News that Hamas tried to play them over the terms of the deal. But today, a team of Israeli officials arrived in Cairo to continue those talks. Well, Israel has been threatening a ground operation in Rafah in southern Gaza since March. Around 1.4 million people are thought to be sheltering there, most of them displaced by fighting in the north of the Gaza Strip. Well, Israel has now called for one area of Rafah to evacuate, moving around 100,000 people. They've been told to relocate to what's called a humanitarian zone, which has field hospitals, tents, food, water and medicines. But the UN says the infrastructure there cannot support so many people, and aid deliveries have been further disrupted today. The Israeli military took control of the Rafah crossing this morning, and the crossing at Kerem Shalom has been closed since a Hamas attack on Sunday. They are the two main routes that aid had been coming in. Sky News' data and forensics team has geolocated videos showing IDF vehicles driving between the two crossings. entering the Rafah crossing compound, flattening a Gaza sign just inside the crossing, and an IDF tank about 2 miles further into the evacuation zone. Only the Erez crossing in the north remains open. The Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, continued military operations in Gaza after ceasefire talks continue, but no sign of a deal. Our international correspondent John Sparks has been speaking to the families of hostages in Tel Aviv and sent this report.
They weren't going to wait for an invitation. These are Israeli tanks, decked with flags, muscling their way into southern Gaza. A powerful symbol of Israeli intent in an area still under Hamas control. The seizure of the Rafah crossing was described as a limited operation, but Israel's prime minister says he won't stop until Hamas is gone.
Seizing the crossing in Rafah is a very important step on the way to destroying the remaining military capabilities of Hamas.
Military pressure works, the dominant view taking hold in Netanyahu's cabinet. Here, Defense Minister Yoav Gallant visits units deployed near Rafah, and he pledged to deepen the operation all over the Strip. But it only fuels anxiety here. Museum Square in Tel Aviv, which has been turned into a commemoration center for 132 captives still held by Hamas. Most people here want Netanyahu to make a deal, an agreement to get the hostages out. This is Yehuda Cohen. His 19-year-old son, Nimrod, has been held prisoner for the past 7 months.
So we know he was taken alive and he got there alive, and we hope he's still alive.
Mr. Cohen is frustrated. There's a ceasefire proposal on the table that's been agreed by Hamas, and he thinks the government is stalling.
I met yesterday with the Minister of Defense, Yoav Gallant, and I asked him, is the government agreeing of a total ceasefire for releasing of the hostages, of all the hostages? Yeah. I didn't get a direct answer. I asked the same question a few weeks ago, face-to-face to Netanyahu. I didn't get an answer.
31-year-old Doron Steinbrecher was taken by Hamas from her home at a kibbutz. The only proof of her abduction, a solitary message on WhatsApp. They've arrived. They have me, she wrote.
And I have another daughter.
Her mother, Simona, thinks of little else. Doron was her baby, the youngest of 3 kids. There must be a voice in your head that is saying, take the deal.
Not only me, all the other family of the hostages say that, take it. Make the deal, because we must begin to take the hostages out, and we can't do it alone.
The fear of war is widely felt. This is Al-Mawasi, a humanitarian area where Israel has told residents in Rafah to evacuate. Yet their operation is coming dangerously close. There's nowhere left to hide in southern Gaza. John Sparks, Sky News, Tel Aviv.
It's now known that the hack at the Ministry of Defence, which Sky News understands was at the hands of China, could have been caused by failings of a contractor working for the government. Well, here's what we know. There was a hack of a third-party payroll system, which is now confirmed to be SSCL, a business support service, with the personal information of service personnel and some veterans targeted. The MOD says names, bank details and a small number of addresses could have been compromised, although initial investigation suggests no information was removed. There are about 270,000 service records which could have been breached, but special forces are not believed to be in that group. Our deputy political editor, Sam Coates, has this report.
The men and women tasked with the defence of the nation, but has the government left them exposed? Their personal information hacked in a huge breach. Names, bank details, and in some cases, addresses. Sky News understands the government is blaming the Chinese state.
Mr. Shapps, are you scared of upsetting China?
That question dogging ministers. Sky News exclusively revealed the hack on Monday night and the belief across Whitehall that it was orchestrated by China. But no public blame from the government today. The Defence Secretary in the Commons not naming the culprit.
In recent days, the Ministry of Defence has identified indications that a malign actor gained access to part of the Armed Forces payment network.
And pointing the finger at an outsourced contractor.
The House will wish to note that it is operated by a contractor, and there is evidence of potential failings by them, which may have made it easier for the malign actor to gain entry.
The man he wouldn't name, Chinese President Xi Jinping, today in France, warmly welcomed here, but tensions with NATO allies are growing. Beijing said the hacking accusations were completely fabricated and malicious slanders. Few in Westminster believe that denial.
And it's becoming obvious.
And senior backbenchers want more explicit action from government.
I believe that the Defence Secretary could well have stood at the dispatch box, given what they know, and said it is believed that it is China, not some malign actor. It is believed that this was China that had hacked our systems. I think, honestly, he probably wanted to do that. But I suspect that somewhere else in government, maybe the Foreign Office, maybe the Treasury, has said, oh, no, we don't go doing that. We don't upset China.
The compromised payroll system was run by contractor Shared Services Connected Limited. The company's website celebrates its work with the MOD and its secure financial services. Experts say it's a rich target for a hostile state.
It might, depending on how far you can get into bank account details, allow you to look for potentially vulnerable people. And that's a classic espionage technique where you can put pressure on vulnerable people. The other thing is China, as we know, steals gargantuan volumes of data elsewhere. And if you can put things together, then perhaps you can build that richer picture.
Some in Whitehall are baffled at the decision of ministers to blame China in private, but not in public, particularly given China's angry response today, which suggests there's little to be gained from holding back. China seeks to dominate as an economic and technology superpower. Is the British state strong enough to respond? Sam Coates, Sky News, Westminster.
A Kremlin spokesperson has told Sky News that he believes there is an opposition to President Putin in Russia on the day that he was sworn in for a fifth term. The lavish ceremony in Moscow praised Russia's greatness as he thanked his soldiers for fighting for the motherland. Sky's Moscow correspondent Ivor Bennett reports.
To call it an inauguration might feel misleading. After all, this was not his first time. It's the start of Putin 5.0. The Kremlin choreography is all part of the routine now for Russia's leader, almost more ritual than political process.
Уважаемый Владимир Владимирович, прошу вас принести присягу.
After swearing an oath of allegiance to the Russian people, there was a promise to protect them, ominous words for the West.
You, the citizens of Russia, have confirmed that our country is on the right course. This is of great importance right now as we face serious challenges. I see this as unwavering resolve to defend our choices, our values, our freedom, and Russia's national interests.
The symbolism here is key. Held inside the throne room of the Tsars, this was a projection of power. Among the audience were pop stars, sports stars and religious leaders, even a former Hollywood action hero.
Why do you support Vladimir Putin, Mr. Seagal?
I can't answer questions that stupid. Yeah, sorry.
Why is it a stupid question? It's just an open question.
I think it's pretty stupid, and I think you know the answer.
But others were more willing to talk.
Western leaders and Western governments say Vladimir Putin has turned Russia into a dictatorship. Why do you think that's not the case?
This is not the case, absolutely. Absolutely, it's just propaganda. It's a rough propaganda, nothing else.
But is it democratic that there isn't really any opposition to speak of in Russia?
But there is opposition inside the country. Well, of course, the conditions are much more tougher right now because we are in a war conditions.
Vladimir Putin is already the Kremlin's longest-serving leader since Stalin, having been in power for nearly 2.5 decades. At the end of this next term, in 2030, there'll only be one person ahead of him, and that's her, Catherine the Great. The question is, what will a fifth Putin term mean for Russia and the world? His last term saw the invasion of Ukraine and a crackdown on dissent at home. Some believe he won't stop there.
This is a one-track movement towards more authoritarian, or I would say half-totalitarian, a hybrid totalitarian regime. He made Russians his hostages, but at the same time he's hostage of himself.
After so long in power, there's certainly no sign of him changing his tune now. Ivor Bennett, Sky News, Moscow.
Ukraine security services say they have disrupted a plot to assassinate the country's president, Volodymyr Zelensky. 2 serving colonels from the Ukrainian government's own protection unit have been arrested for what was meant to be a gift to Putin before his inauguration. Our security and defence editor Deborah Haynes joins us now from eastern Ukraine. An attempt, Deborah, not for the first time, but how serious was this one?
I think the alleged perpetrators being from the State Guard of Ukraine is particularly serious. It would point to evidence of Russian infiltration right in the heart of the Ukrainian security apparatus that's long been feared, long been suspected. And the details of the plot are also pretty alarming if they are proven to be correct in court. It seems that these 2 colonels, they were allegedly recruited by the Russian intelligence services before the February 2022 invasion, and they were part of a network that was being operated from Moscow, designed to, as you've said, this plot to assassinate Vladimir Zelensky and also other senior officials, including the very head of the SBU, the Ukrainian security service, that has thwarted this scheme. The other target, allegedly the head of the Ukrainian military intelligence agency. That assassination had been timed to happen before the Ukrainian Orthodox Easter, which took place on the 5th of May. And like you said, it was designed to be a present for President Putin's inauguration. That was not to be, but the Ukrainian security services tonight saying that while, yes, this plot has been thwarted, the enemy is very much alive and ready to attack again. So it really is a sense of the ongoing threat, the growing threat, at a time when, yes, Russian forces are making gains here in the east, even as Ukraine does try its best to fight back with the limited weapons that it has.
Deborah, live for us there in eastern Ukraine. Thank you very much indeed. Well, we're bringing you news of President Trump's court action, the Stormy Daniels affair, just hearing on a secondary case, actually, that of withholding classified documents, the Mar-a-Lago case, if you remember. We are hearing that has been indefinitely postponed until pre-trial issues can be resolved. So this is one of the more serious allegations against Donald Trump, that he took thousands of documents and held them at his Florida home at Mar-a-Lago. That has been indefinitely postponed. We'll find out more and bring that to you. Now, Prince Harry has arrived in the UK ahead of a ceremony marking 10 years of the Invictus Games tomorrow. But today, the Duke's spokesperson said the King was too busy to meet him while he was in the country. Sky's royal correspondent Rhiannon Mills has more.
With his arm propped up to hide his face, Prince Harry was back. Our camera, the only one to film his arrival in the UK, heading into an Invictus event a day earlier than most had expected, which made the confirmation he won't be seeing his father, who's still having cancer treatment, feel peculiar. Harry's spokesperson said a meeting, unfortunately, will not be possible due to His Majesty's full programme. The Duke, of course, is understanding of his father's diary of commitments and various other priorities and hopes to see him soon. We know the King is in London, seen here at Clarence House. Almost on cue, the palace also releasing these photos of him meeting the Prime Minister of Fiji. His military family was always going to be Harry's primary focus this week, 10 years since he launched the Invictus Games for injured servicemen and women.
We will always be here to be able to spread the message, tell the stories, change the perspectives, and help as many people as humanly possible, because Invictus transcends borders, it transcends politics. It is what it is. There's this magic within this community.
Dominic Reed was involved from the very start and knows Harry well.
Prince Harry decided to leave the UK, to step away from royal duties. Has that had any negative impact on Invictus, do you think?
No, I don't think it's had a negative impact at all. I think, there's the business of him being in a different place, so I see him face to face less regularly. We all do, but he does join all of our meetings, and he does come to all our events. He was in Dusseldorf. He's been at the 1 year to go events, both in Vancouver and in Dusseldorf before that. He's here this week.
Some have suggested the recent dramas show they're like any other family. But with Harry's relatives, we are left wondering if it was really royal protocol or the pain of what's been said that stopped another potential reunion. Rhiannon Mills, Sky News, in central London.
A man has appeared at the Old Bailey accused of murdering a 14-year-old boy with a sword in East London. Marcus Arduini Monzo is accused of attacking Daniel Anjorin as he was walking to school in Hainault last Tuesday. 4 other people, including 2 police officers, were also injured during the incident. Police say a 5-month-old boy seriously injured in an incident at Legoland in Windsor has died. A 27-year-old woman has been questioned on suspicion of neglect and since released on bail. The SNP's John Swinney has been voted in as Scotland's new First Minister. It comes after former leader Humza Yousaf officially tendered his resignation to the King in a letter this morning. Well, speaking at Holyrood after winning the backing of MSPs, Mr Swinney admitted that the Scottish Parliament was divided and urged colleagues to work together.
I'm absolutely over the moon. I didn't expect to become the First Minister of Scotland, so it's despite my long involvement in politics and my long ministerial service, it's a bit of a surprise to have come to me at this particular moment. So I'm thrilled, I look forward to the challenge, and I will give it everything I have got within me.
Well, for many years, we've been uncovering the mysteries of the ocean and its creatures. It's now been discovered that sperm whales may be even more complex than previously thought and could help us understand further communication between animals. New research suggests they can combine and modulate different clicks and rhythms to create complex calls similar to human language. Our science correspondent Thomas Moore reports.
The extraordinary sight of sperm whales fast asleep off the Caribbean island of Dominica, but it is the wonder of their language that scientists are getting really excited about. These 2 whales are taking turns to communicate in rapid bursts of clicks. Slowed down, they sound like Morse code, with clicks separated by gaps of different lengths. There's so much information coded in the patterns that scientists from a study called Project SETI believe the whales are able to coordinate joint tasks such as foraging for food and rearing their young.
We know that their auditory part of their brain is very well developed, and they're making these very complex sounds. So it plays a huge part of their life, and especially because vision doesn't work as well underwater unless you're really close. So sound is like their eminent mode of communication.
Whales in the East Caribbean pod identify themselves with 2 evenly spaced clicks followed by 3 in quick succession. But different sequences of clicks have other meanings, and by varying the rhythm and the tempo, there's even more layers of complexity in the calls. Scientists have identified 143 unique combinations they call a sperm whale phonetic alphabet.
Right now, they are at the very foothills of understanding in terms of how do we get to the point where we could communicate. Is that even possible? We're assuming that they are able to think like us and we like them. And it is analogous to trying to communicate with an alien, potentially.
Sperm whales have the largest brains of any living creature and are highly social. When they're born, they babble just like human babies before learning their language. Scientists are trying to do the same with artificial intelligence to understand and one day talk back to the whales. Dr. Dolittle may just become reality. Thomas Moore, Sky News.
What a prospect. Well, that was Sky News at 10. Coming up, we'll take a first look at tomorrow's newspapers in the press preview. Tonight, joined by the journalist and broadcaster, Jenny Kleeman, and the PR consultant and Conservative candidate in the upcoming general election, Alex Dean. Welcome to both of you. Among the stories we will be discussing, this on the front of the Eye. Its headline, UK gives Israel war crimes warning for Rafah invasion. That and plenty more when we come back. Well, this is Sky News. In just a moment, the press preview, a first look at what is on the front pages. First, though, our top stories this evening. The porn star Stormy Daniels has attended court for the first time in Donald Trump's hush money trial and described her sexual encounter with the former president. Also in breaking news tonight, Trump's trial on classified documents that he took to Mar-a-Lago, that's the accusation, has been postponed indefinitely. The Israeli government tells Sky News that Hamas acted in bad faith over the terms of the ceasefire deal as Israel captures the Rafah crossing in Gaza. And the company at the centre of the Ministry of Defence hack, which Sky News understands was carried out by the Chinese state, is named in Parliament. Hello there, watching the press preview, a first look at what is on the front pages. Time then to see what's making the headlines with the journalist and broadcaster Jenny Kleeman and the PR consultant and Conservative candidate in the upcoming general election, Alex Dean. Welcome to both of you. So plenty to discuss. Let's take a look at the front pages, shall we? Starting with the Financial Times, reporting that Israel has threatened to expand its offensive in the Palestinian city of Rafah, with mediators said to be struggling to keep ceasefire talks on track. According to the Eye, the UK government has warned Israel it runs the risk of committing war crimes if it doesn't protect civilians in Rafah. Responding to the news that the King won't be able to see Prince Harry while he's here in the UK, the Metro has the blunt headline, "Sorry, son, I'm a bit busy." The front of the Mail says Prince Harry was forced to admit his father, the King, was too busy to see him after he flew in from California. The Times leads with new rules to curb social media algorithms pushing harmful content towards children. The Telegraph also leads with protecting children online, saying children under 13 will be kicked off social media platforms. The Guardian reports that Garrick Club members have voted to lift the ban on women joining the club. The Express hears from the former Immigration Minister, Robert Jenrick, who seeks to dispel what he calls the myths that migration contributes positively to Britain's economy. The Mirror reports pubs will stay open until 1 a.m. during Euro 24 semi and final nights if England or Scotland make it through in Germany. And the Star's fixation, it says here, with boffins continues. Apparently, they've now discovered that bacon sandwiches can shrink your brain. A reminder, by scanning the QR code you'll see on screen during the programme, you can check out the front pages of tomorrow's newspapers while you listen to our guests. So let's head straight to Jenny and Alex. Welcome to both of you. Gosh, lots to talk about. Come to Harry and Stormy Daniels in just a moment. But first of all, Jenny, why don't we, bring ourselves up to date with what's happening at Rafah on the ceasefire and the latest in this Gaza war?
Well, Israel have taken control of a very important border crossing, the border crossing between Israel and Gaza at Rafah. It means that aid cannot get through in as much as it was able to get through beforehand. And the point of all of this is this is a sort of symbol of Israel's defiance in the face of negotiations that were taking place. There's sort of Egypt, Qatar brokered ceasefire plans that were accepted by Hamas have been rejected by Israel. There was some footage that came out that the IDF released, which The Guardian refers to here, about tanks flying Israeli flags, crushing a concrete sign reading "I love Gaza." Many sort of images that will be quite worrying and disturbing, particularly as we know that after so many months of this conflict, aid is desperately needed. People don't have places to go, and there's always been this fear of a kind of wider escalation in Rafah. At the moment, this is just a question of the border being taken over. And the 100,000 people who've been told to move as well. Being told to an area that UNICEF today described as sand dunes, but it does have some humanitarian help in it, but the suggestion is not enough for the numbers who would need to go there. Yes, absolutely. And also there is a sense, I think, among people in Gaza that, a lot of the people who are in Rafah have moved from Khan Yunis, and they moved from Gaza City to Khan Yunis. And there is this sense of that they are going to be perpetually in motion. I mean, Israel reiterating its stance that, the only way to eliminate Hamas is to go into Rafah, to exterminate the tunnels there. But, this is a very, I think, for all concerned here, this is, it is terrible that this is happening at this stage. There are families of Israeli hostages on protests in Tel Aviv today, saying that every day that goes by is another day when hostages are dying, or at least, very least, are not being released. And it is a shame that we haven't been able to make progress. That Israel and Hamas have not been able to find a way of releasing the hostages and having a ceasefire.
Well, let's go to the FT then. Israel threatens a wider Rafah assault because at the moment nobody's sure whether this move to the Rafah crossing is part of a hardline negotiating tactic, do they?
Well, it seems to me the distinction that you were drawing out with Jenny about the difference between going into Rafah per se and taking over the border crossing is actually vital here. The Times is reporting that discreetly, the Netanyahu regime has reassured the Americans that this is them offering some restraint. That, you know, there are forces within Israel that want to go the full hog. They want to go in and take over Rafah per se, and the restraint being shown by Israel is to say we can control this border, and I don't think they can keep aid out for long at all. Just realistically, pressure of the international community, humanitarian suffering on the ground will mean that that border crossing will be functioning for aid, albeit the Israelis, I imagine, will be wanting to impose significant restrictions or searches and checks on what comes through. That one of the things is Hamas allowing things that are not meant to be aid into these areas. But they are not going the full hog, because what the people to the right, and there are, the people to the right of Netanyahu in his coalition, without whom he doesn't have a majority, are saying, you're being too soft, you're not going far enough. And you can appreciate the position that the Netanyahu regime is in now, because if it doesn't seem to satisfy the demands of those who want proper redress for what happened on October the 7th, his government will fall. And at that point, I don't think that's in anyone's interest either. Whatever you think of Netanyahu right now, the Knesset in chaos, not having a functioning government, is not a good idea either.
Yes, and I mean, there was confusion over whether Erez in the far north of the Gaza Strip was also closed today, which has only just opened to bring in aid as well, normally a foot crossing, isn't it? The Eye as well, UK gives Israel war crimes warning for a Rafah invasion. Certainly the Israeli government spokesman today was saying this is about getting the last 4 Hamas brigades. We can't say we'll get everybody, but it will stop them being able to organise against us, which they can currently do. But, as we see, the international community extremely nervous about this still.
Yes, although, I mean, you do have to question whether or not Netanyahu is anything but oblivious to the criticism of his allies, apart from the US. You know, he cares about his political survival. Of course, a collapse of the Knesset would not be in anyone's favour, but pandering to some quite extreme factions in the coalition is also not going to be in anyone's favour either. And the objectives of this war are get the hostages back and obliterate Hamas. And obliterate Hamas is this broad idea, like a war on terrorism. There is one way of obliterating Hamas, which is to obliterate all of Gaza, and then you will have got rid of all of Hamas. You can take that idea extremely far. And, you know, I would really like to believe that this is just an incursion, this is just a little bit of showing that Israel can take the border and they're not going to go further. But we know that Israel's prepared to go further than anyone, you know, would ever fear. So I think everything's still in play.
I agree with you that the aim of eliminating Hamas is a very difficult one, properly and truly to define, and not least because much of its leadership is not in Gaza anymore, is taking refuge in other countries. But the elimination of Hamas as a functioning fighting force is a legitimate and identifiable activity. It's all the harder because they hide behind civilians and that they put themselves in places making them difficult to identify, but it's still a legitimate objective that any country that had been attacked in the way Israel had been would recognise. But the second objective is worth bearing in mind too. Netanyahu in his statements today says if you just release one hostage, we might avoid further violence. And I know that people will say, well, that's just posturing, but if you were a family of some of the people that have been taken hostage in these situations, you wouldn't think that's just pandering.
If you were a family, you would be really cross that there hadn't been, more cross is the wrong, you'd be furious that November was the last time there was any significant release of any number of hostages. There must be. This is a political failing that there has not been more progress.
It's not just a political. I accept that in the course of a to and fro negotiations, there can be fault on both sides. But the fault about releasing hostages is to do with Hamas.
Of course, who are the hostage takers. But really, I mean, you know, it is not a sign of great leadership that Israel is where it is at the moment.
It's just worth bearing in mind as we see headlines like this that Israel is our ally and Hamas is a prescribed terrorist organisation in this country. There is a right and a wrong here.
Well, in that context, let me read the quote of the Deputy Foreign Secretary, Andrew Mitchell, who said the government has been clear there would have to be a plan which respected humanitarian law, if they went fully into Rafah, and we have not yet seen such a
If
plan.
Britain were attacked and 1,000 of our citizens were killed and hundreds were taken hostage, the idea we would have to present a plan of our intended response to Israel before we got on with it, I think would be laughed out of Parliament.
But Israel's been getting on with it for 6 months now. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. This is not a sort of initial response to a terrorist attack.
I don't think at the time ticks down to the point at which other countries get to say, now I get to referee what you do and don't do.
But there is international law and there are human rights and there is a humanitarian crisis there. And, you know, it should be possible to...
But you're not suggesting Israel has actually broken humanitarian law, are you?
Well, I mean, there are many people who would suggest that Israel has, and there are many things that are being investigated at the moment.
We'll move on, if you don't mind, just because I want to pack in this story, which we've been fascinated by all day. Top of the Times, not the lead story. Stormy Daniels agreed Trump hush money deal for safety. Goodness. The details today, Jenny, in court.
Look, are you coming to me because you want me to give those details, Anna?
I'm not sure.
I'm not sure that I can. There were a lot of times where details were given and then Trump's attorney said, objection.
The satin pyjamas.
And we'll go as far as the satin pyjamas, but there were things, there were rolled up newspapers, there were various other things, there were positions that were described. The judge said there was too much detail. What an incredibly unedifying experience for somebody who is running to be president of the United States to go through, you know, but this is not enough to stop him from being a candidate or to lose him support.
That's definitely right. These things are, I'm afraid, baked in. It's deeply unedifying, of course. And I thought you were reporting earlier from the United States about the coalition of people that came together to give Trump a win in 2016 and wasn't as solid for him in 2020, consisting in large part of evangelicals and suburban women and so forth, some of whom this evidence really might repel. But it is worth bearing in mind, people have known... I don't think people have thought that Donald Trump had a spotless sex life for quite some time. And I remember, whilst, of course, I look too young, I remember being in the United States during the latter Clinton days, when a newspaper said of another allegation against Bill Clinton, here we go again. You know, it was just baked in, and no one was surprised anymore. And I almost feel, I mean, unless the allegations are really unpleasant and so forth, and so far it's that he was dishonest about financial matters and so forth, not about these other things that we can't talk about. That sexual side of Donald Trump's life, I don't think is going to lose a million votes.
Let's just take a look at the Mirror as well. Again, it's not their lead story, but it's the bit that will make you open the newspaper. Probably is what it is, isn't it? As well, Trump's stormy day in court, and elsewhere, we've just heard as well that the Mar-a-Lago case, that he took, allegedly classified documents and stored them inappropriately, showed them to people as well. Yeah. That has been indefinitely delayed.
I think that when the history books are written about the Trump administration, whilst about the Trump trials, whilst you get in The Guardian reports that Stormy Daniels was startled by her sexual encounter with Donald Trump, which is probably how I imagine many of us might feel about a sexual encounter with Donald Trump, but that they will feel that they got them the wrong way round. And they front-loaded the kind of gaudy bits, the most kind of eye-catching stuff. And the really serious things that might actually have made a difference got backloaded so much now that you're not even going to have them heard before the election.
Which is taking classified documents, some very serious about nuclear capabilities and, sedition and trying to change the result of a fairly won election.
Yes, I mean, this is very serious stuff. But again, Donald Trump has always used a playbook where he is able to spin all of this as saying, look how threatened the establishment is by me. They are prepared to throw all of this in my path to try and stop me from going out on the campaign trail. That is what the Republican line is as well. And he's always able to play this to his advantage. I don't think this is going to sway any undecided voters one way or another.
Yeah, well, it's all absolutely fascinating, isn't it? We'll see what happens next with that. Coming up, though, we will discuss the fact that the King won't have time to see Prince Harry while he's in the UK. Get the reaction to the newspapers about that.
Gender-neutral toilets are a great way to protect a lot of different people, and I think what we're seeing right now is the government using a distraction technique that targets trans people to distract from a flailing government. And I don't think this policy will do anything to protect anyone. There's no evidence that suggests that mixed bathrooms are inherently more unsafe than sex-segregated ones. And meanwhile, there's a lot of compelling evidence that shows that lots of people are made more unsafe by by having only sex-segregated toilets. And I'm thinking about people like trans teenagers, but I'm also thinking about cis people who are gender non-conforming, who don't necessarily pass as the gender that they were assigned at birth. And these are the people who are going to suffer when we start really policing people's sex before they go to the toilet.
It was only in the late 1800s that women could actually go out at length from their own homes, and we had to fight for those spaces. And they were only offered those because of the need for women to spend more money. So it's never been that women get what they ask for. We have to fight for it, and now we have to defend it. Now, this is about women. It's not about how people choose to identify. It's about the needs of women. And women and men, and I'm using the term there to mean male and female, use toilets differently. And the way that men use toilets, unfortunately, means that women aren't able to use those spaces in the same way. We have to sit on wet toilet seats. This is not acceptable. But that disregards the actual safety aspect of, the installation of spy cameras, which can be collected later. This happens. This is the world that women live in.
We live in a world that is non-sex segregated. We sit on trains next to each other. We sit in the theater next to each other. We sit on the tube next to each other. I've just been in Germany, and I went to a mixed co-ed sauna where everyone was nude together, and it was completely a non-issue. If you go to a queer bar in East London, toilets are labeled cubicles or urinals. It's a non-issue. And I'm not trying to say that that's like a utopian space, far from it, but it's very easy once it's done. And I would encourage Jean to come and visit a gay bar in East London and just see how it does work, because what she's worrying about are hypotheticals that aren't really bearing out in the evidence and which do end up harming more women.
Welcome back. You are watching the press preview with me once again, Jenny Kleeman and Alex Dean. Welcome back to both of you. I know you have to read your phones to see the inside pages because we just get the front pages sometimes.
Thank you.
I do understand, but we'll come on to online safety in just a moment. But anyway, first of all, the King and Harry, the Metros take Alex, sorry son, I'm a bit busy, which actually, for Wednesday might be true, to be fair to the King. But
and
anyway.
his schedule does seem busy, but it's surprising that you can't squeeze in a little time to see your son. I think this is really sad. I mean, many will say Prince Harry has made his bed and he can lie in it. He's chosen to go and live on the other side of the world. He's either had or encouraged others to have on his behalf significant tiffs with an institution he lived in all his life and understood the rules therein. But I still think in the end there is a family point to this that you can't get. It's irreducibly sad. You can't get away from the fact that a father and son should be able to speak to each other, especially when the father has cancer.
And the Mail, which has had its own ructions, as we know, with Prince Harry. Harry's reunion hope is dashed. A somewhat, sympathetic-sounding headline, to be fair. He here for the Invictus Games, the 10th anniversary. The King hoping to go to one of the first Buckingham Palace garden parties of the season and so on. But, it is, not even a cup of tea.
And you can always make time for your children. You can always make time for your children if you want to. I mean, the thing is, you can understand where this is coming from in that a large part of Prince Harry's living has come from mining the private details of his family for material. And you can imagine, you can empathise and think, surely every member of the royal family that is dealing with him is going to think, is this going to be in the next book because he got a serial book deal, or the next documentary? And it just shows how seriously bad things are in that family, that even when his father has cancer, his father will not make time.
And is it deference to William and Catherine? Because of their rift?
Maybe, but I think Jenny's probably right. Somebody's advising the King, you're better off not seeing him at all than giving the window.
Giving him material, that's how he makes his living.
If you, at the end of, in between formal events, if you say, You come and stand there, and as we come by, we'll have a quick hello, and then we'll all be able to say we've seen each other, even if we're not getting on that well, and perhaps, you know, who knows, we'll get on. It's the absolute position of not seeing him. That's the sad thing.
Very quickly, only 40 seconds if you don't mind, the Daily Telegraph and the Times both talking about how the online safety bill will be enacted for younger people, for children.
Yes, Ofcom is going to be in charge of ensuring that social media platforms are going to have to install very tough age checks to stop children from accessing content, dangerous content, but also content if they're younger than 13. And if they don't cooperate, they will be able to fine these social media companies 10% of global revenue, or £18 million, and block their services, which is a really enormous, significant step. So there's going to be ID that children must show. The argument in the past has always been, you can steal your older brother's ID.
Yeah, you just say you're young, you're older than you are.
I do think that level of friction would stop a significant number of children trying. So yes, it's imperfect, but it will stop children from trying.
If you make a rule, many people obey it. My concern is about a cliff edge, where people don't have any exposure to 13, and then whack, here comes social media.
Very good point, very good point. Anyway, see you later. Thank you very much indeed. Let's check out the weather. The rest of the week will be warmer and mostly settled, but the far north can expect rain at times. Wednesday then starting mainly dry, some mist and fog around, low cloud affecting eastern parts of England. That low cloud will burn back to the coast through the morning. The fog will lift. The best of the sunshine will be in the south, while thicker cloud in the far northwest will bring rain to the Western Isles. Our press preview continues in Sky News at 11. We'll have the latest on the porn star Stormy Daniels attending court for the first time in Donald Trump's hush money trial and describing her sexual encounter with the former president.